Alright guys, I just got back from the range and wanted to give you a quick report on some 6.5 Carcano ammunition, specifically Milsurp Munitions produced 6.5 Carcano with a 2.68 diameter bullet, and see how the velocity and accuracy compares to other ammunition. So I shot 8 to 12 rounds each of the Milsurp Munitions 6.5 Carcano in 2.68, Milsurp Munitions in 2.64, and PPU ammunition in 2.64. First off, with any sort of statistical comparison, you need to make sure your variables and conditions are constant, with the only deviating variable being the ammunition type. So with that being said, I was using a Caldwell G2 chronograph. The weather was evenly overcast, no rain, at about 55 degrees Fahrenheit. Wind was negligible, but picked up from time to time. And I was using this rifle, a Carcano model 1891/41, which has a barrel length of 27 inches and does not have progressive rifling, which shouldn't have much of an impact, even though most pre-M38 Carcanos do. It has 4 lands with a twist rate of 21.5 centimeters. All progressive rifling really would have added to this is a longer barrel life, but ballistically negligible in terms of this test. According to Giovanni and Alberto's book on the Carcano, the 9141 should produce a muzzle velocity of around 2,225 feet per second, so ballistically very similar to the original Model 1891 long rifles. My example is a non-Royal Tiger Imports example, so it should be a fine constant with this ammunition. Now, Milsurp Munitions offers 2 types of 6.5 Carcano ammunition, a 2.68 and a 2.64 diameter Spitzer bullet, both at 139 grains. The 2.64 diameter cartridge was his first option when they opened their doors, but both are available, so I figured I'd do a side-by-side test. There isn't much of a commercial market for 2.68 diameter cartridges in the US, so he is one of the only makers of the cartridge, which is closer to the original configuration. And I also shot some PPU 2.64 diameter bullets at 123 grains, also Spitzer soft point bullets. The PPU bullet weights are slightly different, so that could have been another variable that created differing results. The PPU 2.64 diameter bullets that are the most available cartridges on the US market has created this notion for years that Carcanos are not accurate rifles or that they're junk rifles, but this bullet diameter is too small to effectively engage with rifling. I know this has been a major complaint by Carcano shooters for years, but PPU won't change this for reliability reasons, so having 2.68 size commercial rounds available should help improve our accuracy. Another variable to consider is the shape of the bullets, with PPU using Spitzer rather than the longer flat-nosed Cooper-nickel jacketed bullets the Italians historically used. There are also other variables like the solenoid powder, weight of the bullet, and about a dozen other components in the production of the ammunition that differs. Now, you could, and people do, shoot original cartridges, but it's not necessarily economical, and historical ammunition degrades over time. Some reloaders pull bullets from original Carcano cartridges and use those. PPU does make 2.68 bullets for reloading, but full cartridges aren't available on the US market for some reason. Now let's go ahead and talk about the results. The Milsurp Munitions 264 ended up with an average velocity of 2,124 feet per second, a standard deviation of 22, and an extreme spread of 70, so pretty stable. The PPU 264 had a higher velocity at 2,454 feet per second, a standard deviation of 82, and an extreme spread of 222. Not as consistent and definitely a little hotter. And finally, the Milsurp Munitions 268 ended up with an average velocity of 1,951 feet per second, a standard deviation of 37, and an extreme spread of 97. So pretty stable as well, but certainly a lower velocity. Now, keep in mind that the historical cartridge load for the 6.5 Carcano was a 162 grain full metal jacket round nose bullet measuring 267 inches in diameter and loaded with 35.2 grains of selenite powder. The nominal muzzle velocities varied from 2,130 feet per second in the carbines to 2,295 feet per second in the 30-inch long rifles. So what does this all mean? All of them shoot comfortably, and I didn't have any squibs or case damage coming out of the Milsurp Munitions ammo. You could definitely feel the difference in velocity between the PPU and Milsurp Munitions cartridges, the former of which was higher. Milsurp Munitions also shot very consistently. The 268 was in the sub 2,000 range, while their 264 ammunition was averaging 200 feet per second higher. I'm not sure why this is, but it didn't seem to have an effect on accuracy at all. So let's go ahead and look at the accuracy. Obviously, people complain about the accuracy of these rifles, but most don't know how to aim them properly. Here's a useful guide on how you're supposed to shoot them from CarcanoRifle.com. With most Carcanos, the front sight is supposed to sit at the bottom of the V-notch, unlike traditional sights where the front sight is supposed to line up flush with the top of the rear sight. And then you're supposed to keep the front sight at a 6 o'clock position from the target. So you want the front sight just barely peeping out from the middle of the V-notch. So already this is an unusual task for most Milsurp shooters. On top of that, the 9141 has an adjustable battle sight set for 200 meters, and we're limited at 100 yards at my range, so you're already having to aim a little bit lower anyways. So side by side at 100 yards, the 268 Milsurp Munitions performed the best without a doubt. Out of 12 shots with PPU 264, 6 landed on paper. With 8 shots of the 264 Milsurp Munitions, 4 landed on paper. Both had a 50% hit rate with no discernible groupings. With the 268 ammunition, I had 11 hits on paper out of 12 with at least a 5-shot grouping in the center diamond with 4 in the upper left-hand quadrant. Now, there are obviously variables here like barrel wear and the shooter accuracy. Some Carcanos are more used than others because they only have a 4,000 round barrel life, so mileage may vary on these. I've seen guys that shoot well with 2.64 diameter bullets, but they may have better conditioned barrels. So slugging your bore is an option, of course. If you're shooting some of the recent RTI Ethiopian imports, you might get really crusty and worn barrels, so this could have no effect if you're consistently keyholing. But what I can say is that I did get much better accuracy with the 268 diameter bullets, so the lower velocity didn't seem to have a performance problem, so I'm glad I was able to perform this test and show you all. Now, these are $40 a box, which is more expensive compared to commercial PPU, but totally understandable with a small one-man operation dealing with a niche cartridge. I do have the components to load my own 268 at this point, so that will be my next incremental test. Anyway, that was my overview of getting the Milsurp Munitions 268 cartridges, taking it to the range, and testing it. So with that being said, we'll see you guys later.